Thank you, Vikram. Excellencies, distinguished guests. My flight to Delhi took the usual scenic route along the entire range of the Himalayas between Nepal and Bhutan. The first time I gazed at these mountains was in 1989. It was breathtaking. I was awed and inspired by the majesty and grandeur of this unbroken range of snow-clad mountains. It was easy to believe then that these were indeed the abode of the gods. Dubbed the third polar region of the world, they symbolized nature's supremacy and its power to sustain life, with more than 1/10 of the world's population depending directly on its water resources. My flight along the same route after a stretch of absence from the region have not been evocative. And the pilots who fly the route share my experience and feelings. Yesterday was the worst. There appeared to have been no snowfall in the Himalayas this year, even at these heights and the Tibetan plateaus beyond. Much of the range looked like a high wall of gray and jagged outcrop of rocks. The gods seemed to have abandoned their home. An ominous blanket of haze threatened to break across the protective line of clouds. Even the mighty Everest and the beautiful Kanchenjunga, the third highest mountain in the world, looked fragile and crestfallen, with pervasive patches of gray and brown. All I could feel was guilt and sadness. That took me to the thoughts of my 6-year-old daughter, my granddaughter. I decided that I must very soon take her on a flight to Nepal, just so that she could witness this dying and disappearing wonder that may not even survive until her adulthood. I joined the Norwegian Prime Minister in his remarks on the recent comments on the IPCC report. Those who took delight in chastising IPCC for its mention of 2035 as a possible year by which the Himalayan glaciers could disappear, I think missed the point. They take undue comfort in the imperfect, underdeveloped, and sometimes dishonest science of climate change. High in the vulnerable mountain kingdom, my fellow citizens and I live, see, and feel the disconcertingly rapid change. Climate change, I believe, is not only about what scientists report. It is as much, if not more, about what we actually experience and from which we suffer. It is about the need for nations and their leaders to take strong and responsible measures. Let me be honest at the very outset. The kind of development we have embraced, particularly in the last 1 century, has not been of the kind that has advanced human civilization. Ours is a world driven by the raging greed of a society obsessed with an excessive desire to consume. The insatiable nature of this obsession is evident in the way we have adopted the GDP-based development model that promotes limitless economic growth and expansion as the means to human well-being and satisfaction. Growth is the imperative, and for too long we have pursued it without being clear about the purpose and end state of development. No limit is set on how much and for how long growth is to continue, and whether such a continuous process is sustainable in a finite world. That any kind of growth, according to natural law, must lead to maturation and succumb to decay has been brushed aside. We need to begin by acknowledging the truth that life as we live it is propelling us toward self-destruction. We need to open our eyes to the high price of social dislocation and environmental devastation that has been paid to achieve GDP targets. Let us accept that this powerfully dominant indicator is based on the seriously flawed belief that unlimited economic growth is necessary to promote human well-being. We have willfully deluded ourselves by misleading or by misusing GDP which was designed only to measure the volume of goods and services transacted in the market at a given time. That was not a part of my speech, the music.
Yeah.
As I said, are we capable of grasping the reality that much of the wealth we have accumulated is in fact illusory, as made so lucidly clear by the Great Depression, the Asian financial crisis, and the global economic recession that we think we have just overcome? It is, of course, far more convenient to forget how many so-called rich people saw their balloons of wealth burst into nothingness, just as life savings and security of a home and job disappeared overnight for millions of ordinary people across the world. But life must go on. The risks are too high for those whose concern is for the immediate and for those for whom the future is for others to care. And so the billion-dollar bailouts and stimulus packages to continue with more of the same toward a final catastrophe from which the pain of recovery and reconstruction will be far greater than the pains of a planned and gradual paradigm shift. According to the ecological footprint analysis, global ecological footprint was roughly half the regenerative capacity of the planet in 1960. By the mid-1980s, it crossed the critical threshold, and in 2005, it was estimated that demand exceeded supply by 30%. This means our generation has consumed its share of the planet's resources and capacity and has already begun depriving future generations of their share of resources and their chances of survival. The central issue in sustainable development is how can we reduce production and consumption levels to stay within the limits of biologically productive capacity of the planet. How can we ensure that in so doing we will not lower or reverse the level of our well-being? We in Bhutan believe that happiness, the end state of well-being, the highest degree of well-being, must be the purpose of development. In this regard, Bhutan has been guided for several decades now by the concept of gross national happiness, or GNH, which, while being consistent with the sustainable development concept, it goes beyond the concept of sustainable development to actually relate development to contentment and happiness. Conceived by our fourth king, it is based on the belief that happiness can be achieved through development that balances the needs of the body with those of the mind within a stable and sustainable environment. Accordingly, the royal government has undertaken this responsibility for the last 3 decades through a 4-pronged strategy popularly referred to as the 4 pillars of GNH. And these are equitable: 1, equitable and sustainable socio-economic development; 2, conservation of the environment; 3, preservation and promotion of culture; and 4, promotion of good governance. Sustainability under GNH assumes a broader meaning and frame to include ecological, cultural, social, psychological, and political, as well as economic development. By the way, having followed this philosophy and this policy, Bhutan was able to declare at the COP15 that we are a carbon neutral country. And that we will remain so, that we will continue to absorb the carbon emitted by other countries. The importance of this summit and its subject is evident in the level and diversity of participation that it has attracted. My hope is that having come to this great city with high expectations, we will achieve something remarkable and truly satisfying of the nature that can only come from courage to reconcile with the truth that the very survival of mankind is threatened, not by extraterrestrial forces, but by its own foolish actions. as I take my return flight across the Himalayas, I would like to be able to dream that the gods will return to their abode and that my granddaughter will someday delight and inspire her own grandchild with a view of the majestic grandeur of the great Himalayas. Thank you.